You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back to the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, and I'm joined by Frank Tucker, representing the Crib, South Florida, also recruiting analyst for Canes County. We represent for the Rivals.com network, so make sure you subscribe to the website. Use the first 30 days for free by using the promo code Miami30. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County, and also subscribe to this podcast on all platforms, the Storm Tracker podcast. This week, Frank, we've got Louisville battling for the Golden Boots, I think it is. It's a trophy game now, battling for a trophy that's in honor of Howard Schnellenberger. But it's a big game because two reasons, man. You kind of want to see the Miami Hurricanes bounce back from the loss against Florida State and not kind of, wallow in their misery after losing a big game and losing several games this season. But also you kind of want to knock off a team that it has aspirations of maybe even getting into the college football playoffs. Certainly winning this game for Louisville actually punches their ticket to the ACC championship game. This week, though, Frank, Mario Cristobal has decided to go with Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. And I think it was not so much a shock that he named, that Tyler Van Dyke is the starter, but the fact that he named him was a surprise to me, because usually Cristobal is very candid about these situations. When you heard the news, Frank, what were your first thoughts?
I thought that Jacurri Brown probably doesn't want to play football this year at the University of Miami. That's what I thought, honestly. It seems like Miami's only option right now is Tyler Van Dyke, unfortunately. And we know that decision to go a different direction was made last week. And unfortunately, Emory Williams broke his arm. But, man, I wish they would give Jacurri Brown a shot. It's frustrating to see Tyler Van Dyke back out there, because I think the arm talent is there. I think that he has the capabilities of being one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC, but their confidence just seems broken. And the question is, does that confidence come back after you just benched him? Is he Jalen Milroe? I don't know if he is. So it's a little frustrating that we're back in the same spot we were in just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, certainly is. He comes off unconfident kind of on the field, but when you experience him in person, like in these press conferences, he comes off very confident. So I don't know if it's just a body language thing with him or he is actually that confident. I think that's really a question I think many Hurricanes fans have, including ourselves. Is he confident enough to kind of make throws in a big spot? Will he be confident enough to get through a game if he throws another early pick, which I think is kind of one of the keys to this game, Frank? Do you think he is confident enough to make a big throw in a big spot if he's forced to in this game against Louisville?
I don't know if going into the game he will be, but I think that Louisville is susceptible to letting him gain that confidence. We've seen Louisville in the games that they've struggled in this year, whether that was Indiana or Boston College or Georgia Tech or Pitt. I mean, Pitt, they didn't allow a ton of passing yards, I think under 50% completion, but still there were some big plays on offense that they allowed, where we've seen them allow passers to put up big numbers, close to 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. They allow you to throw the football. My thing is TVD going to be able to take the game over against a defense that doesn't allow you to rush the football? Because I don't think this is going to be a Mark Fletcher game. We know that A.J. Allen is banged up. I don't think that Brashard Smith has the confidence of the staff, just based on his work ethic and his consistency of making the right decision. We saw him make that personal foul penalty during the Florida State game that was just so unnecessary. I just don't think this is going to be a game that we're going to be able to rely on the run game like we have against Florida State for large parts, or NC State when Mark Fletcher was doing well, or the Virginia game, or even the Clemson game. It's not going to be a game where Miami's going to be able to run the football, even with that exceptional offensive line that they had. So Miami's going to have to take advantage of what is a suspect back end of the Louisville defense. Overall, I think that he can gain that confidence early, but like you said, the turnovers just have to stay away, because that's when Louisville is at their best. When they're making plays on the back end, they're able to get that high-powered offense that is that Purdue scheme under Braum on the field. Jack Plummer knows that offense. He's a fifth-year senior. He's going to make plays. And despite, Miami's defense being good, I think this has to be a shootout for Miami to win it.
I don't think it will be, to be honest, because I think both of these defenses are pretty damn good. And, I just don't see these offenses scoring a ton of points in this game. But stranger things have happened here. Before we dive in more into the game, I do want to dive in more into this quarterback situation, Frank, because you said something that was pretty poignant. It was the fact that you said that Jacurri Brown may not want to play football anymore. Why would he feel that way? Why would he, I guess not want to play himself? I would think maybe the coaches maybe want to hold him back, put him on the shelf, and not, I guess, risk his confidence or injury in this type of game. But why wouldn't he want to be out there and really kind of show what he can do?
Why risk it? Why risk it? I know that people are going to say, oh, he doesn't even have to burn his red shirt if he plays these last few games.
Right.
Why put yourself in a position for injury when you know that you're going somewhere else? I think that decision was almost made when Emory Williams was on the path to be the backup quarterback. When we heard rumblings in the spring and into the fall, especially at last scrimmage, about Emory Williams potentially being the future of this program, that was kind of the writing on the wall for me with Jacurri Brown. And everything that we've seen is kind of shown that that's the truth. He hasn't been a guy that has even been in conversation for competition, even when things seem to open up. This week, Tyler Van Dyke was named the starter. They didn't even make it a competition. They're not putting any packages in for him. He could have played against FSU and still redshirted the rest of the year. You can utilize in the red zone, especially on the goal line, you can utilize him as a wildcat quarterback to where he's showcasing what is his best trait, and that's his legs. And they don't even utilize that. So for me, it has to be that the kid don't want to play, because I know that this staff sees that they have to see that there's some sort of value that he could bring to the offense, because last year it was utilized. Remember, there were packages put in at the beginning of the year, even when he wasn't throwing the football, that they were putting that wildcat package in there, just trying to get him involved, keep him involved with the offense, and keeping everybody on their toes when Tyler Van Dyke was still entrenched as the starting quarterback. So for me, it's just weird to see a kid that was a former blue chip type kid, had the pedigree coming out of Lowndes. He knocked off teams like Miami Northwestern. He was a guy that Mario Cristobal in his first half cycle, I guess you could say, prioritized in being part of that initial class. The only thing I could see why he is not getting any opportunity to play is that he doesn't want to. It's the only thing that makes sense for me.
That sucks to hear if that is the truth, because I still want to see Jacurri Brown. I still want to see him at least in some packages or something like that. I think that would add a nice wrinkle to this game and for the final 3 games of the season, if you want to count the bowl game. So I definitely do want to see more of that, or some of that, from this Miami offense. But let's talk about Louisville. I personally think that they are fool's gold when it comes to that 9-1 record. I think they're a good team. I think they're a top 25 team. But as far as like being a team that should be considered for the national championship, I don't think this is that caliber of a team. This is a team that, did not play Florida State, did not play North Carolina. These are the top teams that Miami played. And I don't think, they had that signature win against Notre Dame, who is also a good team, but I don't think as good as a Florida State. So, what are your thoughts on Louisville and just kind of, Miami's chances, I guess, against a team that, you know, has a one-loss record, but maybe not be as good as the record shows?
Louisville is the epitome of the ACC, right? Can you finish close games? That's the only thing that Louisville has shown that they can do. They've knocked off Indiana in a close result. They've knocked off Notre Dame in a close result. They've knocked off Virginia Tech and Duke, and it was Duke with banged up Riley Leonard, right? Like, I don't think these are signature wins. Murray State struggled against Georgia Tech in the opening week. Struggled against Virginia last week. Listen, I think that they're a good team, like you said. They're a top 25 team. But are they a top 10 program? Like, are we putting them in the same breath as, let's say, Georgia or an Alabama or somebody who's fighting for the college football playoff? Absolutely not. If a few plays swing a different direction, we're looking at a team that's closer to Miami's record than we are 9-1. And I feel like that's why I'm not discouraged about what happened with Miami this year at 6-4, is because they could realistically be an 8-2 team if good quarterback play was there, or if they were able to finish off some games, or cut down on a few turnovers here and there. Everything has been close at times, and that's how the ACC has been all year long. I think Louisville is coming in here with some confidence. This is a Super Bowl for pretty much any team in the ACC, even when Miami is down, because it's something that you can use in recruiting. We were able to knock off Miami. That NIL power that they got over there, we were able to knock them off, right? We got a quarterback that's a fifth-year senior that was like a former walk-on. We were able to knock them off. So they're going to come in motivated. I just hope that Miami is able to not be derailed by a loss from Florida State that was close, and almost use it as a building block. We know Mario Cristobal is going to go into this week of practice, or he came into this week of practice with a ton of energy. We saw it last week against Florida State. We know that defense is going to be on point, and I think that the receivers are still going to be up to par. It's just a question of Tyler Van Dyke. And you asked me what the chance is of Miami winning this game. They got a chance in every game the rest of the year because they have that defense. They have the base of upwards of 4 running backs that can make plays. They do have Colby Young, who's a playmaker. Jacoby George shined in multiple games this season, especially last week against Florida State. And Restrepo is a dependable guy. So I think that there are pieces that can keep Miami in this. It's just a matter of winning that turnover battle, taking advantage of what is a suspect back end of that Louisville defense, and limiting what is a fast-paced, air raid type offense of Louisville that is reminiscent of what they did under Rondell Moore, with Rondell Moore at Purdue and David Bell at Purdue and guys like that. They're going to try to get their slot receivers in space, make big plays in the passing game, and try to take advantage of what could be a young back end of the Miami defense, depending on what the situation is of both corner spots. So we're going to see about that. I do think that Miami is going to keep this one close, even if they lose this one. It's just been the MO of Miami as of late.
I got the highlights of Virginia and Louisville playing here on the YouTube channel. And I'm playing this game because, to your point, they are a middle of the road kind of ACC team, just like Miami is. Let's just face it. They're like this. There's a middle of the road that pretty much damn near every ACC team is on. And Louisville struggled with this team, Virginia, last week. And Virginia was playing with their backup quarterback, Calandria, not Musket like we saw. So Miami battled against Virginia, came out with a win in that game. Louisville battled against Virginia, came out with a win as well. So these teams are definitely a lot more equal than the records suggest. And just like that game against Virginia, and just like that game against, I think, NC State, this is where the coordinators should make their money here. right? This is where Lance Guidry, who just got nominated for the Broyles Award this week, this is why he was not. What we see on Saturday, we're hoping for it to be evidence of why he was nominated for the award, because I think they can scheme to win this game, because their running back Jawar Jordan didn't play in that Pitt game, right? And that's the one loss that they played. Basically, one loss that they had on the season. So basically, what that tells me is, like, you take him out of the game, you have a good chance to win the game. So my guess is that they scheme to try to stop their running back, Jordan. If they do that, you force a quarterback that has been prone to make mistakes this year in Plummer. So I think that is going to be the game plan going in. And from what we've seen from Guidry this season, I don't see any reason why this defense doesn't execute the plan. And then it all comes back to the offense once again. And just like this NC State game didn't go Miami's way because of turnovers, that could be the same situation in this game, because Miami could have definitely won that game against NC State, but turnovers did them in. So I would hope that, with knowing that, TVD makes a change here and holds on to the football, because he said in the press conference today that in that particular game that he basically forced the ball to Kobe George in the end zone. He was doing too much. He's by his own admission, he said he made dumb mistakes. So if he just eliminates the dumb mistakes, then Miami has a good chance to win this game, get some turnovers, get the crowd going into this game, and come out with a victory for the Hurricanes on Senior Day. So the other thing too is, besides Guidry, is Dawson. Like, how is Dawson going to manage this situation? Is he going to kind of try to turn TVD loose here, or is he going to go with the same game script as he did with Emory Williams, against a Clemson, or in most of that game against Florida State? Do you think Dawson turns him loose and lets it rip by what he said in a press conference a while back, or will we see a lot of dinking and dunking and short screen passes and zone reads up the middle?
I hope that he lets it rip, because that's where the weakness of this Louisville defense is letting it rip and making plays against them through the passing game. You're not going to run on Louisville. You're not going to do that. Every highlight you see against Louisville is either them making a TFL, or like they only allow teams to rush for 3 yards per carry. That is ridiculous on a season, right? Like that is a wild number. And then on top of that, they don't allow teams to rush for 100 yards a game, a combined 100 yards per game. Not a 100-yard rusher. They don't 91 yards per game is what they allow. That means they are a dominant defense, and they're top 15 defense in all of college football because of that front seven and what they're able to do with Ashton Gillett and guys like that. So I hope that Miami's able to put guys in motion in this air raid attack, see some of the stuff that we saw against Texas A&M, where they utilized the run game, but I think our leading rusher had about 70 yards, not 100 or 120 or 140. That's not going to be what wins Miami the game this week. And listen, I think that overall there were times where the scheme worked against Florida State with Emory Williams, but you're not going to get the same play from Tyler Van Dyke that you got from Emory Williams. The running over defensive backs on runs, right? And that tough play and trying to play the field position battle. You have no threat of the quarterback doing anything outside the pocket. So if you decide to just do the dink and dunk thing, I think that Louisville is going to start to play real aggressive. And if you stay with that conservative mindset, they're going to make plays eventually. You have to threaten Louisville down the field. You have to try to get Jacoby George in space, not just on screens, right? Maybe a lot of mesh routes or or drags on different parts of the field or slants. Try to get guys on the move and get the ball out of Tyler Van Dyke's hand quick. But maybe attack the middle of the field. We never see Tyler Van Dyke attack the middle of the field. Everything is outside the hashes, near the numbers, and it's a struggle to watch because we know we're going to get. It's inside zone, outside zone, maybe a little counter or something like that. Then we're going to see screens and then verticals. It's the Tyler Van Dyke scheme. You're going to get out routes that teams are going to just kind of jump on because TVD waited too long in the pocket, can't move, and then he throws a late ball to somebody near the sidelines, right? And again, they make a play on it. I mean, we saw at the end of the game, Tyler Van Dyke gives us hope. He makes a couple of passes to Koby Young, and then he throws an ill-advised pass because he can't make anything happen with his legs, and he just forces the throw. That cannot happen this week. Get Tyler Van Dyke, get the ball out of Tyler Van Dyke's hands quickly. Get Jacoby George in space. Get Koby Young in space. And I think that you can make some things happen because Louisville on the back end is suspect. And look, we just saw Plummer make a dumb mistake because that's what he does sometimes. That's why he's not a big-time NFL prospect.
Right.
Let the defense make some plays, and Miami can win this one 110%. And if you win this one, you possibly get to 9 wins, which in this up and down season is put Mario Cristobal up for Coach of the Year if Miami gets to 9 wins with everything that has gone this year. It has been an up and down year to say the least. Very similar to Louisville last year, in my opinion, where they went 7-5, 7-6, or something along those lines, right? Like Louisville was close last year. I think Louisville last year is very similar to Miami this year. They almost knocked off Florida State. They had a ton of close games, right? It's the same thing. And if you get better quarterback play, which is what Plummer has given to Louisville at times this year, with a mix of a really good running back, and you see what happens. 9-1 in the ACC, which is winnable.
Yeah. The thing I worry about with Tyler Van Dyke trying to throw the ball, deep and, hit windows is that he's inaccurate. Sometimes he's underthrown balls, right? So what was great that I saw from Emory Williams last week was the fact that he did 2 things. Well, 3 things you could say. He didn't turn the ball over, right? That's number 1. Number 2, Emory ran the ball a couple of times on some third downs. And, maybe a couple of times, maybe he should have slid or, but he ran with conviction, and you kind of want to see that from Tyler Van Dyke. And when it wasn't there, or if he couldn't run, what did he do? He didn't put the football in the harm's way. He just took a sack. Sometimes the best play for a quarterback is just to take a sack, and you'll just live to play another down. And I think when we saw the stats at the beginning of the season, where Miami wasn't allowing like a sack. I think they allowed 1 in the first 4 games or something like that. I think part of that is fool's gold because, the offensive line has been great. Let me not take away any credit from the offensive line. It's been outstanding this year. But Tyler Van Dyke has this resistance to not, take a sack. And I think he should start to do that, especially when you have a defense playing as well as they have been. You've got a Lou Groza semifinalist as your kicker. Sometimes you got to take the 3 points. Sometimes you have to settle for the short throw, the check down throw, or run the football and get some yardage to get the first down. I think the problem with TVD is not so much his quarterbacking skills. It's more so his decision-making skills, which, of course, is part of quarterbacking. But I think that is the main issue with Tyler Van Dyke. And I think if he just doesn't make these dumb mistakes, like he said, then, of course, Miami could win almost all of these games and definitely can win this game on Saturday against Louisville. I got to push back on what you said about Cristobal being Coach of the Year. I'm sorry, since he didn't take the knee in that game.
I'm saying if he wins 9, if he wins this game, if he wins
Nah,
this game, if
still
he wins
not with
this
the, not
game,
with the
man,
gaff against Georgia Tech. I'm sorry, that's one of the most
I'm just saying.
all-time worst gaffes in college football history for a coach. You can't win the Coach of the Year award when you make that type of mistake.
You know what I'm saying? I'm exaggerating, but I think that this program, if you get
Sure.
this win, which is yet another signature win, right? If in one season you beat Texas A&M, Clemson, and a ranked Louisville team, I think that's progression, right? You got 9 wins with the bowl game win, right? Going into a season where you have a top 10 recruiting class, you know they're going to hit the transfer portal hard. That means that things are going in the right direction, in my opinion. So a win here, this is a must-win for me this at the end of this season. I know it's going to be a tough one because of the quarterback situation, but let's see what happens. Let's see what happens, man, because I think Miami's got a shot. This is a gritty team. I don't think that Miami is going to allow some of the big plays that teams have allowed against this Louisville offense. And I think that there is potential for Tyler Van Dyke to have a Texas A&M type game because I don't trust the back end of this Louisville defense. And I'm going to say that time and time again. And I hope he proves me right. I hope TVD comes out and has like 300 yards, 350 yards with 3 touchdowns and maybe just 1 interception. I'll take just 1 interception in this game. So if that happens, I like Miami's chances. I think it's overall going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Miami's got the right coaching staff in place. And once they get that quarterback situation figured out next year, we're going to see a much different Miami team because I think that majority of this squad comes back. You're going to see a few guys leave potentially, but overall, majority of it comes back with an inclusion of talent that can make immediate impacts in that 2024 class with the rise of some guys in the 2023 class, especially at like the linebacker position and at receiver and safety. So there's bright things on the horizon, and if a win here could catapult that in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying that Cristobal doesn't have this program in the right direction because I absolutely do think so. I think this team is miles ahead of what they were last year, and the young guys that they recruited are going to continue to develop. They're going to bring in more transfers because you could argue that they had the best success with transfers this season with how they're producing on the field as much as they're playing this season. So, yeah, I think Cristobal definitely has this team in the right direction. We'll see what happens indeed on Saturday, and of course the next 2 games as well. MVP, standout players. Who do you think stands out in this game for Miami on both sides of the football?
Offensively, it's got to be TVD. It's got to be TVD if they want to win this game. And defensively, I think it's got to be Mauanoa once again. If you can, like you said before, if you can neutralize this Louisville rushing attack, you got a chance. And we have seen Mauanoa put up huge numbers in the TFL category. His ability to make plays behind the line of scrimmage is second to none maybe in college football at the linebacker position. So I think if he has a big game, if Tyler Van Dyke has a big game, it's going to open things up for what is a Miami roster that I think has playmakers that can take advantage of what could happen Saturday. Like if TVD's balling, we know that Jacoby George and Restrepo and Colby Young are balling, just like we saw against Texas A&M. If Mauanoa is being a central figure in stopping this Louisville rushing attack, we know that Cam Kinchins is going to make plays in the back end. We've seen Jacurri Brown grow throughout the year. We've seen Jadias Richard do really well against what is maybe the best receiver in college football this season in Keon Coleman, right? Like, time and time again, the defense has stepped up, but the central figure in that is, for instance, Kiko Mauanoa. And if he has a big game, I like what Miami's going to be able to do defensively.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the OC, man. The OC has to have a big game. This has to be his best called game of the season. I mean, you know what you got at this point, as far as personnel is concerned. You can use Brashard Smith out of the backfield. You know that, you can run Jacoby George out of the backfield as well. You can do different things with Xavier Restrepo, and I expect him to have a bounce back game. Surprisingly, didn't have a catch against Florida State. Expect him to definitely show up in a big way against Louisville. I think this is a Shannon Dawson game where we're like, okay, this is why Mario hired this guy. Ken Dorsey got fired. A lot of people are calling for Dorsey to come back to Miami. I don't think there's a chance at all for that to happen. And there's been a lot of pushback on Dawson. I think Dawson is a good offensive coordinator. I think he just hasn't had the quarterback play to play above average for him. I think it's been average to below average for the most part. I'm playing this Texas A&M game because, this is kind of the last game it feels that Tyler Van Dyke played well against a pretty tough opponent, I guess I would say. I mean, that's no knock against Temple or Bethune or Miami of Ohio, but Texas A&M is a little bit of higher level than those teams. So want TVD to kind of show up like he showed up in this game. As you can see, he completed a pass to, Kobe Young. So that's the guy I'm hoping show up. I think everyone else on the offense will. Tyler Van Dyke is kind of a flip of the coin or wait and see. We'll see what happens. But Shannon Dawson, I expect him to have a great offensive play calling game against Louisville. On defense, I want to see the man in the middle really show up again because it seems like Leonard Taylor shows up at times and he kind of doesn't. And I think in a game like this where stopping the run is going to be really key to a victory, you want your big man in the middle, your potential first round pick, to really kind of show up in this game. So I'm hoping he does for the Miami Hurricanes on Saturday. So we'll save our predictions for, CanesCounty.com. Tune in for that. But let's talk a little bit about high school ball, Frank. We're going into the real playoff week now, and a lot of matchups with some great players, targets, commits. What really stands out to you this week when it comes to the high school football playoffs here in South Florida?
What stands out to me is we're finally starting to see some competitive matchups. You got Palm Beach Central versus Benjamin, which is arguably the top two of the top three teams in Palm Beach County going at it. Wade and Charles, a 2025 commit from Miami, going against a solid Benjamin team who has Chauncey Bowens at running back, a Georgia commit. Kamari Williams is another guy who's a Miami target at receiver in 2025 playing in this game. I think this is going to be a really good game that comes down to the wire and probably the top game in Palm Beach County. Another game that's really interesting is West Boca versus Coconut Creek. This is a game that went down to the wire earlier this year. J.P. Mallory had 264 total yards in that game, 200 receiving, which is super surprising for more of a power back. He has been dominant this season. They knocked off.
He had that in the same game?
Yeah, 264 yards in a game, no total, and most of it came through the air. So he's one of the but he's been one of the more dominant players in South Florida this year. I do not expect that to stop this week, despite them playing a really good Coconut Creek team. I also think that's going to be a really good game. Watch for Elijah Cannon in this game. He's a kid who's going to Oregon State this weekend. I would not be surprised as things get closer to early signing day for teams to maybe jump in there because he is starting to solidify himself as a Power 5 corner among circles, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some bigger schools try jumping in when they miss out on some targets late in the process. Another great game, Western versus Palmetto. This is going to be Jacurri Brown versus Koby Howard. Love that matchup. This is a game that we've seen multiple times. And listen, each team has gotten their share of victories in a way against each other. First time they played, Palmetto was able to knock them off with Jason Marshall and Leonard Taylor and Brashard Smith and all those guys. And then Western was able to knock them off, and that was with James Williams on their team. So Koby Howard has been dominant this season, over 150 yards per game. We know
Yeah.
Jacurri Barney and what he brings to the table as a Nebraska commit. There's obviously a bunch of other prospects in that game, like Dobby Belford and some guys on that Palmetto side like Charquez Lee, who's more of a group of 5 linebacker, and Davion Dixon, a 2025 defensive tackle, who's a Miami target as well. Another game that I am looking forward to.
Before you go into the next game, because there's a bunch of targets in that one that you just named. Heard a little smoke about Koby Howard going to Florida State and kind of loving it up there during the game against Miami. What are you hearing about Koby Howard, and his, liking of the Seminoles right now?
Yeah, listen, I think part of it is he's a Pensacola native, so he's a Panhandle kid. That was a chance for him to come back home. He's been down here in South Florida for the majority of 2023 thus far. And I think that it was a chance for him to come back home, and he probably enjoyed that experience. I know that inside that situation, Miami is the dream school. And I think that it's probably going to be a situation that comes down to Miami and Florida State, like we see with majority of targets for both teams. But I do still like where Miami's at in that situation. Miami does have an elite target list in 2025 receiver, and it's already been kicked off with Wade and Charles, who we mentioned at Palm Beach Central. Nashawn Montgomery is another guy that I feel confident ends up at the University of Miami. Kamari Williams, who I mentioned at Palm Beach Central, another guy. Plus guys like Marcus Harris, and who plays at Mater Day, and a number of players around the country that it is one of the more elite classes we've seen at receiver in some time. I think it's better than that 2023 class. Outside of Jeremiah Smith, obviously. I think it's better than that 2020 class, better than that 2021 class. We've seen some really talented classes come out of, especially South Florida receiver, and I think this might be the deepest one that we've seen in some time because there's so much talent. The physical profiles are there. You have a lot of kids that are 6 foot or taller that are already physically ready to play at the next level. Koby fits that mold, and I think that Miami is deep in the race. Yeah, did he have a good time at Florida State? Absolutely. I don't think that there were many that didn't. It was a rowdy environment. It was a really good game, and Florida State does a good job recruiting. That is what it is. Miami and Florida State are going to be in battles for kids for the next 10 years. You got a really good coach in Mike Norvell, and then we know what Mario does in the trail as well. So I think we're back to old school Miami, Florida State battles, which is what we saw last Saturday. And Koby Howard's going to be right in the thick of that.
Jacurri Barney, though, is Miami still, poking around there? I mean, is he solid with Nebraska? Nebraska didn't have a great season. I mean,
I think that they've kept tabs, but I don't think he budges, man. Matt Rule has done a good job of inspiring recruits to want to come to Nebraska. He is a really good recruiter. He did it at Baylor. He was able to convince the NFL that he was worthy of a job. So overall, I don't think that he's on a hot seat by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that much like Miami, kids see it as an opportunity to play early at Nebraska. Jacurri Barney can play either side of the football. All right? If there's an opening at receiver, he's going to take advantage of that. He's also talented enough to play either cornerback or safety at the Power 5 level. So I'm excited to see what he does at Nebraska. I don't think that he ends up at Miami. I think that Miami is more so looking at other directions, like the transfer portal mainly. That's where I feel like they're going to get a lot of receiver talent. They're still in that Jeremiah Smith race. We're going to see what happens there. I think that they're still in there. Florida State obviously has gained a lot of traction.
Yeah,
made a lot of traction.
Yeah,
it made a good impression. And if you look at his social media, you don't see really anything that is involving Ohio State really anymore. So what does that mean, right? Does that mean that he's free game? Does that mean that he's going to Florida State? I think we'll see. There's still about a month to go until, the early signing day period. So we'll see what happens. But I think Miami's still got a chance. They're still going to have the final say-so as the hometown team. Right. Let's see what happens with the CJ Bailey situation at quarterback. If Miami jumps in there, I love their chances at Jeremiah Smith. And if they do that, then you're not going to see him go after anybody else. Maybe not even in the portal too much. Because I do think that everything comes back at Miami. I think you're going to see Colby Young come back. You're going to see Jacoby George come back. We're going to start to see the rise of Nathaniel Ray Joseph. what's going to become of Robbie Washington, right? Isaiah Horton is still a pretty young player that has a lot of potential. There's talent in that Miami receiver room. You don't need to bring in too many guys because you want to bring in at least 3 in 2025. It's a deep class, and Miami has their eyes on a number of names. And then we know what's happening in 2026. You got Malachi Tony already committed. Denarius Gray is the guy that is probably going to end up in Miami, in my opinion. Calvin Russell is a legacy prospect in so many different legs. He's probably going to be a guy that ends up at Miami if he doesn't end up playing basketball full time. So if you bring in 3 receivers in every class, there's only so much room. So I like where Miami's at right now with JoJo Trader, Chance Robinson, who, yes, he is on flip watch. We'll see what happens with Ole Miss and Ohio State in his situation. And then Nye Carr, who has entrenched Miami all the way through. And I do think that – I know that people are going to start to throw rumors out there with JoJo Trader. I think that Miami is completely locked in there. Do not worry. I would not worry about him ending up somewhere else.
Awesome stuff. Anything else as far as high school ball or anything else recruiting you want to talk about?
Darian Jones, who is a Fort Myers defensive back in that 2025 class, is coming out with a top 10 soon. We did just do an interview with him. Miami is looking like option number 1 right now. Obviously, that could change with about a year to go. But I think that once that early dead period gets over and we start to get to that battle Miami time frame, where it's the end of January, and he takes another visit to Miami, watch out for a potential commitment there. I would not be surprised to see him as one of those guys early in 2024 that ends up at the University of Miami.
All right, good stuff from you as always, Frank Tucker, joining me on the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. You see his Twitter handle right there, the Crib South FLA. Also follow him on Instagram as well. Most importantly, subscribe to canescounty.com. Use the promo code Miami30 for the first 30 days for free. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel, Live from Canes County. Already at 10K and counting. As far as subscribers is concerned on this YouTube channel, which continues to grow. And also you can follow this podcast on all platforms as well. That's going to wrap it up for us, canescounty.com Storm Tracker podcast. Until next episode.